Seu nga po mura buhay. 𝒚𝒆𝒍𝒆𝒃𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒏. Mura gub kapo nadasin. Naigay kuki zay awog. Welcome everyone. This is Toy Story Awog. It looks good, 𝒚𝒆𝒍𝒆𝒃𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒏 is going. North, south, east to west. Daparau zugubal tanamon yabugoja telika. Weotau kuik, korusika weotau kut. Heavenly stars moving along their path from beginning of the year until end of the year. Alu adal dapar gimal, mura urial, mura lagalai, alpun lag, 𝒚𝒆𝒍𝒆𝒃𝒂𝒕 nalpun lag. Out in the sea, up in heaven, every creature and every island all belong to us. It's Toy Story Awog. On behalf of all staff and students at 𝒚𝒆𝒍𝒆𝒃𝒂𝒕, I would like to welcome everyone to this very special event. Today, we gather to celebrate 100 years of school here on 𝒚𝒆𝒄𝒂, and we are very happy to have so many family, community, and special guests attending. I would like to acknowledge all the invited dignitaries who have made the time to be with us today. We truly appreciate your visit and we welcome you into our school and community. This school and this community have a rich history that this event will shine a light on. Over the next 3 days, you will hear and share stories of school experiences from past students going all the way back to the time of our workers and actors. This occasion is a celebration for all of those students who have attended this little school since its beginnings in 1922, and will provide a legacy for all of those who walk through these gates in the many years to come. Please enjoy this special time with us here in 𝒚𝒆𝒄𝒂.
A little about my childhood. Growing up, the value of education in my life and the life of my family played a huge role. My parents made a huge sacrifice themselves when I was a child, and that really shaped who I am and the rest of my life. My mum had a love of reading at a very, very early age, and at night when she was young, after she was put to bed, I recall Mum telling me stories about when 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒏 went to sleep and they turned the hurricane lamp off. She would then lie there until they were asleep, and then she'd get a pillow, put the pillow up with a hurricane lamp to hide so that she could actually read, so that that light wouldn't, wake 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒏 from sleep. So, she'd just read and read and read any time that she could. To the point where, she'd be in the toilet sometimes and she would tell me stories about 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒂𝒕𝒊𝒐𝒏 banging on the door, telling her to get out and stop reading, newspapers and books and comics and those sorts of things. And she remembered books like The Phantom and Archie were some of the books that she just used to read for enjoyment, just because she had that love of reading. When she was at school at 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒂, she wasn't allowed to stay home. Every day counted for her. That's the mantra in education we continue to say to our students today and to the staff, and you probably have heard that as well. But she told me a story that at 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒃 when she was young, she remembered being so unwell, and she had to be so sick, and even at that point she said to me, I recall Uncle Eldridge actually carrying her home. He was one of her teachers, and she said, Uncle had to carry me home to Mum because she just wouldn't accept any excuses. You had to go to school. And that day, Uncle Eldridge, as the classroom teacher, took her home and said, this girl is too sick to be here, and actually carried her home. And she remembered that. But she talked about, that's how important education was in her life. And even though her mum couldn't read and write, and 𝒚𝒄𝒂𝒃 couldn't read and write at that time, they still valued the importance of education. When I was little, Mum had to go away, I suppose, for uni. She moved from 𝒚𝒆𝒃𝒂𝒃, and you can see a photo of me there sitting under a one-way tree when I was very small. out at 𝒚𝒄𝒂𝒃 there, and we left 𝒚𝒄𝒃 when I was probably about 3 years old, I think Mum said to me, so that she could go and continue her training to become a teacher. So she left and she took off to Brisbane, and then I was left with my father, who's an Aboriginal man, so she relocated us to Palm Island, and she had to go away for teaching, and so I was left there with my dad's family. And I think the one thing that really sticks with me is that I was so young then, and the love that I had from family at 𝒚𝒄𝒃 and then going to Palm Island to be with my father's family was that the care and the love. And I see that in our community, these here in 𝒚𝒄𝒃, when I go around to schools, I see the love that we have for our kids and the importance that education has on our lives. So I just want to share a little bit about the Aboriginal side of my family. And Mum and Dad, Dad talked to me about his father couldn't read as well, and he talked about after the Second World War there was a hut that when it all finished, they all took off and just basically left everything there after World War II. And he recalls, and I recall even my grandfather telling us stories about they used to wait until the superintendent of the time were away and the administrators of the time, and they'd rush into the bush to read these books. And Granddad shared about that he was so interested in books that's how he learnt knowledge about the world, because the Americans had all these magazines and different types of books in there, and so eventually he taught himself to read. So yeah, I left, so I've gone off script a little bit here. So that picture there that you see of me that's when I went to Townsville basically, and I left 𝒚𝒄𝒃, like I said, when I was really young, and we moved to Palm Island where Dad was. My mum took off because she had to go and do some training, and so left me there. And when Mum came back, she was a teacher in the school for many years at Bulgaman Community School there on Palm Island. And at that point in time, Mum knew that the education, she was in the system, she knew that the education wasn't great. So the sacrifice that I talked about earlier is that, she sacrificed. And so those of you who are at year 1, can you put your hand up if you're in year 1? So if you think about, these little people here, I was sent away I was sent away to Townsville to live with these strangers, who eventually became, my mum and dad. And I suppose I look back now and I'm so thankful that that sacrifice was made, because here I am today, and even though it's hard to talk about, I'm thankful, and I understand why, Mum and Dad made that sacrifice, because they wanted a better education, I suppose, for me. So I studied through 𝒚𝒂𝒃, Remote Area Education Program. Once I finished my primary school, I went to Cathedral School in Townsville, so still being away from Mum and Dad. And then in 2021, I actually finished and graduated. Sorry, 2020 I finished, and then in 2021, I then actually started my first teaching position. And that teaching position, I still had that doubt in my mind, and so I said to Mum and Dad and the family, I said, I'm now going to leave Palm after I finish. I'm going to go back to Townsville. I'm going to teach in there, because I needed to prove to myself that I could teach and I could mix it with the non-Indigenous people, and that I was going to be the best teacher that I could be. So I left Palm again, and in 2001 I went and taught at 𝒚𝒂𝒃𝒄𝒃 State School in Townsville, because I needed to prove that I was going to be that best teacher, because eventually I wanted to come back to community, and I wanted to give back, and I wanted to teach our children. So I suppose it was my own experience as a small child during my own education that pushed me to teach in our remote schools. And I started off back at Palm Island after, teaching, and, teachers would come in and watch me in Townsville, the graduates, because I'd mastered teaching. And so Then I went to Palm and the same thing happened. I was training and teaching beginning teachers who were new to the island and were learning, and so I achieved that I wanted to be as good as other teachers, to be able to give back. I then went to Lockhart River and I was a deputy principal there at Lockhart River for a few years. Then I went to 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 and was the principal there for 5 years. And then in 2018, 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒕�𝒐𝒏, the executive principal at that time, seconded me across and said I needed to come and do 12 months. She'd heard about some of the work that I had done, and she said I needed to come across to 𝒂𝒂𝒂. And I was only supposed to come for 1 year, and then I was supposed to return to my substantive position, and here I am today. I still haven't left, and so I'm permanently based here now, and so really excited, I suppose, about the journey and the work ahead. But I suppose you can see that those sacrifices Mum and Dad had made earlier, it was definitely worthwhile. Mr. Tim mentioned that there's been 17 principals that's gone through 𝒚𝒄𝒄𝒄 since 2000. This could have impacted on the education, but we know that there are some people who have left here and who are leaders, and so it can't have been that bad. But if we look at the data, like Mr. Tim said, our data actually shows that we need to do better. Okay. For me, it's about more than education, but I suppose, Tim, you spoke about that before. It's about what we have here in the Torres Strait. Look around us, we're surrounded by so much beauty. Our culture is so rich, our family connections, our community spirit. We have so many dedicated people who live and work here with us, not just in this environment, but in our other organisations. I see that as well. The work of the leadership of 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 and 𝒐𝒏 from 2007 to now has really embedded the language and culture of the Torres Strait from primary school to high school, and it's so beautiful to stand here and listen to the year 6 students get up and speak fluently in their home language. And that's the work of the prior leadership team of 𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂, and I'm so thankful that that foundation has been set here for our people. So it is time. My vision, I suppose, for our education on every single island at the moment in the Torres Strait is that we need to be where our world is evolving, so we need to move with it, otherwise our kids will be disadvantaged. So my plan is to make sure that we have a 21st century standard that is good enough or even better than anywhere else in the world, even if principals do churn in and out. Okay? We are rewriting the history of education in the Torres Straits to meet the challenges that we face to deliver education here. Part of rewriting that history of education is the new way we are teaching literacy in our primary schools. And if you've been into Di's classroom, you will see that teaching happening, of how she teaches literacy there, happening right now. One of the things that we really need to work on across our nation is really getting that consistency. So it doesn't matter who comes and goes, that we have that consistency in place. 𝒚𝒄𝒄𝒄 campus, our vision here at 𝒚𝒄𝒄𝒄 is education holds no boundaries. And that's about to become a reality in the Torres Straits for all of our schools. And after the school holidays in Term 4, I'm super excited because we're doing an astronomy unit is being developed, and it's on a learning management system for our students. And so we'll talk more about that at another time. But we're actually going to achieve what 𝒚𝒄𝒄𝒄 campus stands for around education has no boundaries. This is a time. This is the start of a time when parents will not feel that they are forced to send their children away, because I know that that's still the current case. We still have many of our families, and we know from COVID that there's still a lot of kids that we send away, and that's partly because we still don't have it right in our education system here. And so I stand here today, I suppose, dedicated and committed to making sure that families don't have to make that choice at some point in time. It is going to take us a few years, but eventually that'll be still be a choice. But we want to make sure that 𝒚𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂𝒂 is the school of first choice. In the bulletin, I want to share something about this campus. One of the headings that I had was 𝒚𝒆𝒂𝒏𝒈𝒂𝒏 leading the way was a big highlight in the bulletin that I put out, and the bulletin gets read across all of our schools. Throughout the Torres Straits, Purma is renowned for their exceptional quality of their celebration, but it's more than that Purma is renowned for. You know, when I come back to work at this campus, the high expectations that I see, that I feel, that is led by Mr. Tim McKee are absolutely outstanding. The school grounds are absolutely immaculate. The classrooms are, the environment in the classrooms for learning for students is so inviting. The staff are always welcoming and among the highest performing educators that I've seen. That goes from the classroom teachers all the way down to our support teams. They're of such high quality. In fact, I think Mr. Ward will talk about someone from this campus who's been nominated for an Australian of the Year Teacher Aid Award as well. Students are ever so respectful and wear their uniform with pride. And Mr. Tim, on many occasions, I've heard him boast quite proudly Purma campus being the best school in the Torres Straits. Or sometimes if it's a state of origin time, I hear Purma campus is the best school in Queensland. So depending on the season, you'll always hear him boasting about that. And you know what? It certainly feels like that too. I agree with Nelson Mandela's quote. The next one. Yeah, last one. I'm almost there. Education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. He also believed education is the great engine of personal development. It is through education that the daughter of any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander can become a doctor, that the son of any of our council workers can become the next principal of this school, can be the next executive principal, can be the next head of campus standing here in my role, that a child of a cray fisherman can become the Prime Minister of a great nation of ours. It is what we make out of what we have, not what we are given, that separates one person from another. Thank you.
Composed by Mr. Morgan. When you're ready.
All the regardless of the color is true. A gift for us from above, united in this pleasure of love. Torres Strait is our home, where it's God in the seas alone. Torres Strait is our home. 'Cause what you feel is what you want. You're a part of land. We might and do. 𝒔𝒂𝒂𝒏, 𝒔𝒂𝒂𝒏, mudah malunta. Jaya, 𝒔𝒂𝒂𝒏. Aku demalunta, Jaya, 𝒔𝒂𝒂𝒏. Regardless of the color is true. A gift for us from above, united in this pleasure of love. Torres Strait is our home, where it's dry in the seas alone. Torres Strait is our home. 'Cause what you feel is what you are. You're a part of land. We might and